Want to take you back to the Union buildings, a bit of movement there taking place once again. The Austrian president in Alexander van der Bellen has now arrived for his official visit and meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're able to spot him arriving just a short while ago. The two countries hoping to strengthen ties in these talks that are likely to unfold over the next couple of hours. I'm spotting there Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, who's also present as part of those talks, and the two heads of state. Once again, the big focus, we understand, will be on getting around the GNU's reform agenda. Austria apparently having investors that are keen to look into pumping money into the country's infrastructure and logistics sector. Hopefully, they will find that this will be money well spent. Also a big push on really bolstering the country's renewable energy projects, the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which is valued at about 11.8 billion rand. We understand that there might be some investment interest from Austria's side insofar as solar thermal energy is concerned. Interestingly enough, there's also going to be a big push on some of the shared principles between Austria and South Africa, both countries emphasizing that multilateralism and a rules-based international order is important. Austria is seen as a neutral, although quite active member of the EU, and also, of course, is represented at the United Nations as well. And so I imagine there's going to be a big push to try and get some kind of cohesive voice around the conflicts that are currently taking place. In the last bilateral discussions, which took place in December of 2023, it seemed there were a bit divergent views, let's call them, about the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, and of course what's taking place in the Middle East between Hamas and Israel. I wonder if it's just worth just spending this moment to take in the sights and sounds for you at the Union buildings.
So you can see the view. It was built, designed by
Austrian President Alexander van der Bellen, who's now been taken through this iconic building by President Cyril Ramaphosa as they tour through the institution itself. There'll be talks behind closed doors, of course, that are going to unfold. And who could, of course, forget the important role that South Africa is playing on the global stage as it heads the G20 presidency. South Africa chairing this particular bloc with the main summit expected in November this year. Austria may very well offer some kind of support for South Africa's role. It might come in the form of financial assistance, perhaps some kind of debt reform, climate action initiatives perhaps, and of course a focus on things like inclusive growth. The presidencies are also likely to also speak about cooperation in places like higher education. I spoke about renewable energy a short while ago, definitely in trade and investment and in waste management as well. There's also a possible announcement, we're told, on joint declaration on multilateralism, around international law as well. As I mentioned, both countries really emphasizing the importance of these multilateral institutions. But I am certainly interested to hear if there'll be any kind of commentary on the conflicts that are currently gripping the world, more specifically what's happening in the Middle East, especially when you consider that both countries seem to have divergent views on what the solution ought to be insofar as that conflict is concerned, as well as, of course, the long-standing war between Russia and Israel, both countries, insofar as that is concerned, taking, I suppose, not necessarily completely divergent views, but not necessarily speaking from the same hymn book. As I mentioned to you a short while ago, what is likely to take place now, and that's what you're about to witness at the moment, is both presidents will start the process of introducing each other's executives to the other president. There are a number of deputy ministers and ministers present. Gayton McKenzie, you can see. We've also spotted, of course, Blade and Nzimande. Very quick process, I suppose, insofar as that is concerned, and will typically go to the other side of the union buildings after taking in this particular moment where President Cyril Ramaphosa will be taken through the Austrian executive, and that is ahead of these two heads of states once again having talks behind closed doors. Let's listen in.
To latch me so that I can.
Right, once again, at 16 minutes after 10 o'clock, you're watching live visuals from the Union buildings, an official state visit from the Austrian President Alexander van der Bellen, now well underway. And typically, it's a highly formal occasion, of course, which is marked by a series of timed, honored ceremonial events, and we've just spotted one of them, which includes the 21-gun salute for both heads of state. There's also a military drill and precision marching that is a typical feature of these visits at the iconic Union buildings. The SABC News team is watching the story from a number of vantage points, including our international desk reporter Khayelihle Khumalo, who joins us now live. And Khayelihle, you are present at the Union buildings, and of course, as expected, this is quite a ceremonial visit, let's call it, from the Austrian head of state.
Well, by all means, and quite a very important time for South Africa and Austria. You can see from the delegation of South Africa, very key ministries. So at this particular point in time, I am expecting President van der Bellen to now inspect the Guard of Honor, a very significant moment, especially because like you alluded recently, we saw the Austrian Foreign Affairs Minister going to Ramallah in Palestine. They are supporting the two-state solution. And also what is very key in this regard, Ayanda, is that even South Africa, that's the point that they've been raising. But what is key is that also we've seen them also going to Tel Aviv to meet with the administration of Prime Minister Netanyahu. But there you have it. Live visuals here, Ayanda, from the Union buildings. It's a pomp and ceremony here. This is reserved for the heads of states, and this is the first one for Austria. And by all means, a very important time. Ayanda, as you know, that Vienna is hosting quite a number of UN institutions, including the energy atomic agency that is very key, especially when it comes to the issue of the non-proliferation of nuclear, a very, very important moment, especially in light of that conflict that we saw in the Middle East between Iran and Israel. So just bear with us. These are moving visuals, but a very, very important time for Pretoria and Vienna, as today they're solidifying these ties, and the president is still inspecting the guard of honor, but obviously a number of expectations here, Ayanda. You know that Austria is one of the key members of EU when it comes to issues of higher education, issues around vocational training. And in fact, when we spoke to the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Alvin Bottas, mentioned it very clear that it's a very key moment, especially because we know South Africa is battling with a number of challenges when it comes to job creation, but also this is a very, very important time given a very volatile geopolitical space, where there are so many issues, the sweeping tariffs from the US affecting so many countries. So for South Africa, it's all about making sure that they reach out to as many countries as possible so that they can deepen trade links, especially in the context of global north. But also a very key moment for South Africa. You know that the country is currently chairing G20, so a number of countries, they want to hear South Africa's standing perspective of the country with all these myriad of challenges. So now the president is going back to that particular position, and we're going to expect the rendition of the national anthem, Ayanda.
Right, Khayelihle Khumalo, part of our team at the Union Buildings as we take in the pomp and ceremony. Certainly a lot of ceremonial decor reflecting both countries' national colors in some respects at the Union Buildings. Standing by now for the citation of the national anthem of both countries. What you just inspected a short while ago was the Austrian president, that's Alexander van der Bellen, inspecting the National Guard of South Africa. It's a symbolic gesture of respect and diplomatic dignity reserved for heads of states who visit the country. Let's just pause now and take in these sights and sounds from the Union Buildings. Right, these are live visuals from the Union buildings. We've just heard the national anthem of South Africa being sung in some ways, recited, led by the South African military as we take in the sights and sounds of this official state visit from Austria's President Alexander van der Bellen, who is now being introduced to the South African executive. Khayelihle Khumalo, once again, our reporter, watching the situation from a much closer vantage point. And Khayelihle, these are strategic portfolios that are represented as part of South Africa's delegation.
Well, undoubtedly, quite a very heavy delegation from South Africa, really representing very, very key ministries. We have seen the minister responsible for science and innovation, Dr. Nzimande, and we know that when it comes to innovation, science and technology, Austria is one of the key players in this regard, especially in this era of the technological advancement, But also we've seen the Minister as well of Public Service is here in terms of making sure that there's efficiency, but also learning in terms of their experiences as well. But we've seen as well the Minister of Home Affairs is here as well, the Minister of Agriculture as well, and representing, of course, the international relations is Deputy Minister Bortes, really pointing to the significance of this state visits by Vienna and Pretoria. As you know, Ayanda, these are strong defenders of multilateralism. It's under siege currently, especially with this current geopolitical environment. And here it's all about making sure that the two countries are able as well to explore the trade and investment opportunities, because currently there's still quite a very enormous gap in terms of boosting that particular area. But also, we see Arts and Culture Ministers here as well, Minister Mackenzie. You know that Austria, when it comes to the classical music, it's almost like a heartland where you have so many composers really coming from that part of Europe, but a very key country located right in the central part of Europe. And when it comes to the issues of logistics as well, with the Balkan states, Austria is a very key player in that regard. But also a very key issue here, Ayanda, is about unemployment for South Africa. That has been a very major concern for this administration. In fact, since the dawn of democracy, South Africa has been crafting these measures, making sure that they're able to make a dent when it comes to unemployment. When you look at Austria, for example, their unemployment is less than 10%. But something of significance, and as you can see now, the visuals, now President Ramaphosa is getting a glimpse of the delegation from Austria. And these are very key partners, and when it comes to peacekeeping in the African continent, you know that you do have quite a number of hotspots, whether you're looking at the Sahel, the rise of extremism, terrorism. It is a very big issue right here in our doorstep in the southern African region, in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. Austria has been one of the key players in terms of the capacity building, dealing with a very element of terrorism that has been a big challenge for Mozambique. And as we know that South Africa was part of the SADC mission in Mozambique as well. So by all accounts, this is very, very key for these two nations. But something that is very key, Ayanda, is that well, there you go. So that's a very important time, Ayanda, where the president is showing really the turbulent history of South Africa. As you can see, the Voortrekker monument being shown, but also just not far from it, you do have the Freedom Park, representing the new South Africa, symbolizing the new nation being created. So really just drawing those parallels in terms of the very, very turbulent history of South Africa and the apartheid legacy, how the country is trying to deal with this myriad of socioeconomic challenges. But undoubtedly, what's going to be a very big issue as well is that the two leaders will focus on the geopolitical issues. As you know, that Austria currently is trying to join the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member. So the election officially will be done in 2026 for a period from 2027 to 2028. So I think they're really trying to get as much support as possible. As you know, that South Africa is currently chairing the G20, a very, very influential bloc where you have the rich countries alongside their developing counterparts as well. And we know of the role of South Africa, and in sub-Saharan Africa. It's always positioned itself as a gateway to Africa in terms of the flows of foreign direct investment. I do understand, for example, that you have about 7 multinationals, and some of them, they do have footprint right here in South Africa, once again contributing to that colossal battle of fighting against unemployment, but also making sure that skills development is really at the cutting edge, really at the very cornerstone in terms of the diplomatic relations between the two countries. But another very important element here, is that we know that when it comes to the current situation in Europe, Austria has been very vocal about the current situation in Ukraine. In fact, they do call it an unprovoked aggression from Russia. By all means, the two leaders will focus on that. And so now we do understand, the two leaders will have an opportunity where they will go now and have a private engagement where they will focus on all these issues. But by all accounts, it is Pomp and Cyril have the net, and they've played quite a pivotal role. Very key partners, that they do support issues of rules-based support of international law. Now, and with all these challenges of unilateralism, protectionism, among other challenges. So we will certainly keep you posted, as the day progresses here at the Union buildings here in South Africa. And a very, very significant time for these two nations, and it's all about making sure that they work together in so many fronts, whether you're talking about art and culture, whether you're talking about issues of technology, but also most importantly, the issues around renewable energy. You know that Austria is one of those countries supporting South Africa's journey to decarbonize, to have a just energy transition. So we will certainly keep you posted